They laughed while cutting my life into pieces. My own blood signed papers like execution orders, smiling as if this was a celebration. No one noticed my phone vibrating under the table. That was the moment my holdings company called security. The house was filled with familiar voices that suddenly felt foreign. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive perfume mixed with the smell of old wood, and family portraits watched from the walls like silent judges. I stood there listening, as if I were a guest at my own trial. The reunion banner read "Family comes first," but the way they avoided my eyes told a different story. A folder slid across the table toward me. Thick, heavy, mine inside were documents that carried years of my sacrifice, properties I bought when I was invisible, companies I built when no one believed in me. They weren't asking. They had already decided I was just there to witness the division. "You've done well," my uncle said, pretending kindness. "It's time to share now." Share, the word burned. I remembered nights without sleep, calls unanswered. Doors slammed in my face. Back then, this table was empty. Today, everyone wanted a seat. Pens moved from hand to hand. Signatures appeared beside my name. My younger brother didn't look guilty, just relieved, like a man who had waited a long time for someone else to fall. My phone vibrated again. I stood up, calm enough to surprise even myself. "I need a moment," I said, and no one stopped me. They thought I was defeated. In the hallway, I answered the call. The voice on the other end was steady, trained, loyal. "Sir, we're detecting unauthorized transfers across multiple assets under your holding company." I closed my eyes for a second. Not from pain, from clarity. "Do you want us to initiate security containment?" the voice asked. I looked back through the glass doors. Laughter, confidence. Victory already tasted on their tongues. "Not yet," I replied softly. "Just be ready." When I returned to the table, the mood had shifted. The papers were neatly stacked now, my empire reduced to paperwork. My brother pushed a pen toward me. "Sign here," he said. "Let's end this cleanly." I picked up the pen. My hand was steady. Too steady. As the tip touched the paper, my phone vibrated again, this time loud enough for everyone to hear. Conversation stopped, eyes locked onto me. No one laughed now. I didn't check the screen. I looked at them and smiled. Then the front doorbell rang. The doorbell rang again, longer this time, sharper, impatient. No one moved. You could feel the air tighten, like the house itself was holding its breath. My brother glanced toward the entrance, then back at me, his smile slipping just a little. My mother finally looked up, confusion clouding her face. Someone laughed nervously and said it was probably a neighbor, but no one believed that lie, not even themselves. I stayed seated, calm. Too calm for a man who had just been robbed in daylight. The bell rang a third time. Heavy footsteps followed, not one pair, several, measured, disciplined. The kind of steps you don't hear at family reunions. My uncle stood up first. "I'll get it," he said, trying to sound in control, but his chair scraped loudly against the floor, betraying him. As he walked toward the door, the room filled with whispers. Loud, panicked, hungry whispers. I caught fragments: lawyer, paperwork, legal, he can't do anything. They still thought this was a game played with ink and signatures. The door opened. I didn't turn around, I didn't need to. I recognized the silence that followed. The kind that arrives when confidence dies. "Good evening," a firm voice said, polite, official. "We're here on behalf of the holding company." My uncle didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice cracked. "This is a private family matter. So is theft," the voice replied, unbothered. Chairs shifted. Someone dropped a glass, it shattered, loud and final. Like a warning shot, I slowly stood up. Behind me the voice continued, calm but sharp. "We have reason to believe that assets under our client's ownership are being unlawfully redistributed." I turned around then. 4 men stood at the entrance, all dressed in dark suits, no visible weapons, but their presence alone felt heavier than any gun. Security badges glinted briefly before disappearing back into their jackets. They weren't looking at my family. They were looking at me, waiting. My brother's face drained of color. "What is this?" he asked, forcing a laugh that never landed. "You called security over paperwork." I didn't answer him. I walked toward the lead officer and stopped beside him, not in front, not behind, equal. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Please observe for now." Observe. That word unsettled them more than if I had said arrest or seize. The officer nodded slightly and stepped back, crossing his hands calmly. The others positioned themselves near exits, not blocking them. Just close enough to remind everyone that leaving was now a privilege, not a right. The room felt smaller. My aunt cleared her throat, hands trembling as she gathered the folders. "There must be a misunderstanding," she said. "These documents were signed voluntarily." "Were they?" I asked quietly. Every eye snapped to me. I took the papers from her hands, slowly flipping through pages. Each signature stared back at me like a betrayal carved in ink. I paused, then looked up at my brother. "Do you remember," I asked, "the night you begged me to co-sign your loan?" He swallowed. "That's not relevant." "It is to me," I said, "because I did it without paperwork, without witnesses, because you were family." The word tasted bitter now. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "This is getting out of hand." I looked at her, really looked. For the first time, I realized she had known, maybe not every detail, but enough. Enough to stay quiet. One of the security men said gently, not threatening, just firm. She froze. The pen was still in my hand. I placed it carefully on the table, right on top of the documents. "You all came here thinking I wouldn't fight," I said. that I'd accept it. That I'd bleed quietly so you could eat in peace. No one interrupted me now. I built my holdings company for one reason, I continued, to protect what I built. From impediments. From enemies. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. I never imagined I'd need protection from family. The silence was suffocating. My uncle tried again. You're overreacting. This can be resolved internally. The lead security officer glanced at me, waiting. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Internally, something dark and patient was stretching awake. Not rage. Rage burns fast. This was colder, sharper, calculated. My phone buzzed again. I checked it this time. A single message appeared on the screen. All secondary accounts flagged. Offshore links confirmed. Awaiting your authorization. My heart slowed instead of racing. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Tell me, I said, looking around the table. Who thought I wouldn't notice the offshore transfers? My cousin flinched. That was enough. I straightened up and looked at the security officer. Document everything, I said calmly. No interventions, no statements, just record. He nodded. Fear finally showed itself, raw and unfiltered. Voices rose. Questions overlapped. Accusations flew like desperate birds trying to escape a burning room. I stayed silent, because this wasn't the moment to strike. This was the moment to let them realize that they were already inside the cage, and the lock had just clicked. The noise in the room kept rising, but it no longer touched me. It was like standing underwater while everyone else drowned in air. My cousin tried to explain, my aunt tried to cry. My uncle tried to take control again, but every word sounded late, desperately late. One of the security men quietly set a small device on the sideboard. A recorder, no announcement, no warning. Just a soft click that told the truth. It was now being archived. Why are you doing this? My brother finally asked. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was scared. We're family. I turned to him slowly. Family doesn't ambush you, I said. Family doesn't wait for a reunion to strip you down. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in his life, he had nothing prepared. My uncle reached for the folders again. This time to pull them back, one of the security men stepped closer, not touching him, not threatening, but the message landed anyway. My uncle's hand froze midair and retreated. The room had shifted, power had changed seats. I walked around the table, not rushed, letting my footsteps count. Each step felt deliberate, like punctuation. I stopped behind my aunt, leaned slightly, and spoke softly enough that only she could hear. You always told me to be careful, I said. You said blood attracts blood. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders trembled. I straightened and continued walking, stopping behind my cousin next. You once asked me how I slept at night, I said. I sleep fine. I just don't sleep stupid. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked. I returned to my seat at the head of the table, but I didn't sit down. Sitting would have made me equal again. I rested my hands on the chair instead. Let's be very clear, I said, my voice calm but carrying. Nothing here is finalized, nothing here is legal, and nothing here is leaving this house tonight. My uncle scoffed weakly. You can't detain us. I smiled, not wide, not cruel, just enough. I'm not detaining anyone, you're free to go. One of the security men casually shifted, standing closer to the door. But, I added, anyone who leaves will trigger an automatic review of every financial connection they've ever had with my company. Personal and professional. The scoff died in my uncle's throat. My phone vibrated again. I didn't check it this time. I already knew what it would say. Systems don't panic. People do. My mother finally spoke again. What do you want? She asked quietly. I looked at her for a long moment. Sacrifice. Silence, fear, love twisted into survival. I want the truth, I said. All of it. The words landed heavier than any threat. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then my cousin laughed, a short, "You're acting like a king," he said. "This is ridiculous." The security officer turned his head slightly toward him. Not a threat, a reminder. My cousin stopped laughing. "I'll start," my aunt said suddenly. Her voice shook, but there was something else in it now, resignation. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Every head turned to her. She clasped her hands together, knuckles white. "They came to me first," she said, nodding toward my uncle. "They said you were getting too powerful, that you'd cut us out eventually." I felt something cold slide through my chest, not surprise, not pain, confirmation. "They said it was better to act now," she continued, "to protect the family." Protect? My brother stared at her. "You said this was legal," he whispered. She looked away. I let the silence stretch. People reveal more when you don't rush them. My uncle slammed his hand on the table. "Enough," he barked. "Yes, we planned it. Yes, we used the reunion. But you would have done the same in our place." I leaned forward slightly. "No," I said. "I wouldn't." "How can you be so sure?" he snapped. "Because I didn't," I replied, "even when I could have." That landed harder than shouting ever could. My phone buzzed again. Longer this time. The security officer leaned in just enough for me to hear. "Sir, the financial team is requesting immediate direction. External partners are asking questions." External partners, the invisible audience. The part of the world my family had forgotten existed beyond this dining room. "Tell them to wait," I said quietly. "We're still talking." He nodded and stepped back. My brother stood up suddenly, knocking his chair over. "This is insane," he said, voice breaking. "You're enjoying this?" I looked at him, really looked. "No," I said. "I'm remembering." He took a step toward me, then stopped when two security men subtly shifted. not blocking him, just present. You think you're untouchable now? He spat. I tilted my head. Do you? The question hung there unanswered. My mother covered her face with her hands. The room felt smaller again, but not because of walls. Because of truth closing in. My cousin Lee spoke again, quieter this time. What happens next? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out into the dark yard. Cars were parked neatly outside. Too neatly. Another layer of security had already arrived. Behind me, I could feel them watching, waiting for a verdict that wasn't coming yet. I haven't decided, I said at last. That's the worst part for you, isn't it? No one replied. I turned back to the table. And until I do, I continued. Nothing moves, no assets, no money. No one? The security officer checked his watch subtly. Time was now a weapon, and it was on my side. My phone buzzed again. This time I knew exactly what it meant. I looked up at my family, every face tight with fear, regret, calculation, and spoke slowly. We're just getting started. And the lights in the house flickered once. Then steadied. The flicker of the lights unsettled them more than the security ever could. It wasn't dramatic, just a brief reminder that systems, electrical, financial, human, were all connected. And that someone somewhere had their hand on the switch. My uncle forced a chuckle. You're trying to scare us with theatrics now. I didn't respond. I watched my brother instead. His eyes kept drifting to the door, then to the windows, then back to the papers on the table. He was doing the math. He had always been good at numbers, just not consequences. One of the security men spoke quietly into his sleeve. No one could hear the words, but everyone felt their weight. My cousin shifted in his chair like it had suddenly grown thorns. You said we could leave, my uncle said. Are you taking that back? I finally sat down, slowly, deliberately. The chair creaked under my weight, a small, human sound in a room full of tension. I said you were free to go, I replied. Freedom doesn't mean safety. That ended the conversation. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. I placed it face down on the table, right on top of the folders. Ownership layered over betrayal. My mother lowered her hands from her face. Her eyes were red but steady now. You planned this, she said softly. It wasn't an accusation, it was realization. I prepared. There's a difference. One assumes the worst, the other survives it. My aunt leaned forward. If this is about respect, she said. We can fix this. Renegotiate. As if trust were a lease agreement. You already renegotiated, I said. Without me. Silence followed, thick, pressurized. The security officer cleared his throat. Sir, he said, addressing me directly, our legal team advises that several signatures here may be considered coercive if challenged. My uncle snapped his head toward him. Who asked you? I raised a finger. He stopped. Coercive, I repeated, tasting the word. Interesting. I looked around the table. Who here felt pressured to sign? No one answered. Of course they didn't. Admitting pressure would fracture the illusion of unity they'd built this whole betrayal on. My cousin finally muttered, This isn't how family works. I nodded. You're right. That scared him more than if I'd argued. Outside, an engine turned over. Then another, low, controlled. Not the sound of arrivals, of readiness. My brother rubbed his temples. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Not the room. I stood up again and walked over to him. Not fast, no. Just close enough that he had to look up. I want you to remember, I said. Every time you told me to slow down. Every time you said I was being paranoid. Every time you said they'd never do that to you. His jaw tightened. I want you to remember, I continued, that you were wrong. He looked away. I picked it up this time. A message, clean and precise. External auditors have initiated review. Media monitoring indicates early interest. Awaiting confirmation to proceed. Media. That word rippled through my chest like distant thunder. Not yet rain, but close. I locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. My uncle leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. You wouldn't, he said. You'd destroy all of us. I met his gaze. You should have thought of that before you tried to destroy me. His confidence finally cracked, just a hairline fracture, but enough. My mother stood up slowly. Please, she said again. Not to them. To me. I looked at her for a long moment. The room waited. Sit down, I said gently. She did. The security officer stepped closer to me. Sir, he said under his breath, we're approaching a point of no return. I nodded. I turned back to the table. Here's what's going to happen next, I said. You're going to tell me everything. Who suggested this? Who funded it? Who believed they'd walk away clean? My cousin swallowed hard. I smiled faintly. Then the story gets told without you. That did it. My aunt broke first. Words spilled out, messy and rushed. Names, calls. Meetings that weren't supposed to happen. Promises made in quiet corners. A lawyer who'd assured them everything was airtight. A consultant who'd guaranteed I'd never notice until it was too late. I listened. I remembered every name. My brother stared at the table like it might open and swallow him. When my aunt finally ran out of breath, the room was dead silent again. Anyone else? I asked. No one spoke. I checked my watch. I said, because now you wait. For what? My uncle demanded. I didn't answer him. I nodded to the security officer. He spoke quietly into his sleeve again. Outside, the low hum of engines shifted. Doors opened, closed, footsteps on gravel. My family heard it. Every one of them. My cousin's voice trembled. What is that? I looked at the door. Ops, and I said. My phone buzzed one last time. I glanced at the screen, then looked up at the table. Still no ending, I said calmly. And the knock came, slow, deliberate, unmistakably official. The knock came again, heavier this time, final. Every face at the table turned toward the door, as if whatever stood behind it would decide who they were allowed to be next. I didn't rush. Endings deserve patience. Open it, I said. One of the security men moved, opened the door, and stepped aside. 2 people entered. Neutral suits, neutral expressions, carrying the kind of folders that don't argue. Behind them, through the open doorway, the night was alive with quiet movement. Cars, people, systems aligning. Good evening, the woman in front said. We're here regarding the holding company's assets. My uncle stood up again, anger flaring like a last match. This is harassment. She didn't look at him, she looked at me. Sir? I nodded once, she turned a page. Effective immediately, all attempted transfers initiated tonight are suspended pending review. Accounts linked to those transfers are frozen. The word frozen landed like ice water. My cousin let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. My aunt's hands trembled openly now. My brother closed his eyes. The woman continued, additionally, due to irregularities, several signatories may be required to provide statements. Tonight, my uncle asked sharply. Soon, she replied. Time will be communicated, I thanked them. They left as quietly as they came, the door closed. The house felt different now, emptier, like something had been removed from its bones. No one spoke. I walked back to the table and gathered the folders. Slowly, deliberately, I stacked them, straightened the edges, and placed them back where they belonged, under my hand. This ends the paperwork, I said. It doesn't end the consequences. My brother finally looked at me. His voice was small. What happens to us? I considered him. Not as an enemy, not as family, just as a man who had chosen wrong. That depends, I said, on what you do after tonight. My uncle scoffed weakly. You think you've won? I looked at him, really looked. This was never about winning, I said. It was about control. I turned to the security officer. Stand down, I said. For now. The men relaxed, not fully, but enough. The room exhaled. My mother stood up again, slower this time. You didn't destroy us, she said. It wasn't praise, it was disbelief. No, I replied. You tried to destroy me, I just stopped you. I picked up my phone and typed a short message. Sent one tap. Outside, engines started. A signal acknowledged. I moved toward the door, then paused. Listen carefully, I said without turning around. The company remains intact, the assets remain mine. Any future attempt by anyone in this room to touch what I built will be met without warning. I turned back to face them. You wanted a share, I continued. You should have asked when I was still generous. My brother swallowed hard. Is there any way back? I met his eyes. This was the real ending, not the paperwork, not the security, not the fear. There's no rewind, I said, only distance. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the night. The air was cold, clean, honest. Behind me, the house stayed silent. No one followed. No one called my name. I got into my car. As the door closed, my phone buzzed one last time. All systems secure. Holding stabilized. You're clear. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the engine hum. The reunion was over. And for the first time in a long time, everything I owned was exactly where it belonged.